Hey everyone, I'm Jason Verlinde, the publisher of the Fretboard Journal. Welcome to the latest installment of Fretboard Journal Live, where we go behind the scenes and take you into our offices and conduct an interview with one of our music heroes. Today we're talking to Pete Huttlinger. Pete, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
Good to be here. We go way back.
Yeah.
Every time we do these, they're brought to us in conjunction with Martin Guitars, so I got to give a shout out to them and thank them for helping us out underwriting this. Check out their guitars. They're doing some amazing stuff. I think they just announced a few new ones for Music Miss. Just happened today, I think. And I want to tell folks, before I forget, because I always forget, I think, if you haven't subscribed to the magazine, please do. Fretboardjournal.com. It's a reader-supported magazine that features a ton of great instruments and a ton of great musicians, such as this gentleman.
And it is the best magazine I've ever seen. I'm not kidding. It's every issue I own. I own every issue that you've put out, and every one is a coffee table quality book.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I think we first met at a Fretboard Journal event in Nashville when you were... It was a little rougher for you back then.
Yeah.
And we asked some folks on Facebook if they had any questions for you, and of course, a bunch of them emailed me in Facebook, like, how are you doing? How are things?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I got this battery pack and controller, and it's hardwired into my heart.
Yeah.
I've got a heart pump sitting up there, so I call this thing Donna and the Twins.
Okay.
And it keeps me going. It stays with me 24/7.
Yeah.
And I got no complaints in life.
All right.
I mean, I've got nothing to complain about.
Yeah. Good.
It'd be kind of rude if I did, huh?
I guess so.
Yeah.
The last one we did was with David Greer. So far we're 2 for 2 with Nashville guys with good sense of humor. I don't know what that's about.
I don't know.
For folks who maybe haven't heard your music, and you're a tremendous fingerstyle guitarist among other things, would you play a tune for us?
Sure. Be
All
happy
right.
to.
Well, we did get one request or two. Someone wanted to hear "I Got Rhythm." Can you bust that out?
Sure.
All
But
right.
I won't do that now because I just put it in a tuning right before we went live.
Go for it.
So I'm going to play a tune that I wrote called "The View."
Okay. beautiful.
Thanks.
When did you write that?
Maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is your what's your writing process like?
It's different for different pieces of music.
Yeah.
You know, it depends if it's something that I'm asked to write.
Yeah.
Then I just sit down and I just start coming up with ideas.
Yeah.
And the ideas tend to flow pretty quickly. If it's something for myself, I tend to have more of an organic kind of process in that I just sort of mess around on the guitar. When something strikes me, I'll get out my iPhone and record it and go back to it later and see what I like in those bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And sometimes they come together really quickly.
Yeah.
And I just write them down and then it's down on paper forever. And sometimes it's a lot slower process.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you? Well, let's go back before we get too far into this.
Okay.
You grew up in California,
Mm-hmm.
and unlike most teenagers, you picked up the banjo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the rationale there?
Girls.
Girls, yeah. Or
Girls like
you didn't
banjos,
want the
right?
girls around you?
I was fascinated with banjo because my sister married a guy from Virginia,
Yeah.
and his whole family came out to California, and they all played old time music.
Yeah.
And he played the banjo,
Yeah.
and I really looked up to him. And so I was kind of smitten with the banjo from the time I was about 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a couple of years to talk my mom into getting me one.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept bugging her, and she finally relented. I said, all right, we'll get a banjo in the house, but don't tell the neighbors.
Yeah. And then how long?
It's
When
a
did
joke.
I know. When did the transition to guitar come along?
Well, I actually started on guitar when I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
With one of my older brothers. We took lessons together. And when he quit, I quit because I was scared to go by myself.
Sure.
But I was still drawn to music. And so I got back into it. I was probably 11 when I started on banjo, so maybe 12 or 13.
Mm-hmm.
I started messing with guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 14 years old. My oldest brother was in college, and he said, you will have a classical guitar teacher by the time I come home in 2 weeks, and you will have had one lesson. I said, or what? He said, I'm going to kick your butt.
Mm-hmm.
And I took him at his word, so I had a classical guitar teacher.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the difference. I just thought, well, guitar is guitar, and it was fun.
Yeah.
You know, little did I know what kind of foundation I was laying down for myself.
Yeah.
You know.
And do you feel like between the banjo and the classical guitar, you probably had all your fundamentals and, you know.
Well, certainly for the right hand.
Yeah.
The left hand took a long time.
Yeah.
And that was just fingerstyle. You know, I flat pick a lot too, and that was a whole nother beast
Yeah.
to tackle. But you know, all the beautiful chords that the left hand plays.
Yeah.
That took a long time because I was growing up playing, you know, things by the Eagles and Neil Young and Crosby, Stills and Nash and John Denver. You know, just all these different things that were on the radio at the
Sure.
time. And you know, James Taylor, that was too hard to play back then, so we just avoided those songs.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And then okay, so you're practicing, you're listening to the radio, you're playing tunes. Did you have any pivotal instructors growing up that kind of helped you, or were you kind of just woodshedding in your bedroom?
No, I started out on banjo with a teacher.
Yeah.
And he was a really good teacher. And at one point he told me I should check out a record by a guy named Joe Pass.
Mm-hmm.
I said, all right. So I went out and got a Joe Pass record, and I put it on, and I said, oh, that's pretty different music. I don't think I like that too much.
Yeah.
So I put it away for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And you kind of, music is an art, and like any art form, you have to be educated in it to really appreciate it.
Yep.
So I wasn't in tune with jazz at the time,
Yeah.
and so that was a little hard for me to grasp. And he also told me I needed to check out Django Reinhardt.
Good.
And
yeah.
I bought one of his records, and I didn't really get that either, because I was into these rural sounds that the banjo made.
Yeah.
But he was pivotal in that he had me get those records.
Mm-hmm.
And then my classical guitar teacher was really good, because I told him, I said, look, I'm playing the banjo already. I've got a pretty well developed right hand, and I play with a thumb pick and two finger picks. I said, I'll get rid of the finger picks, but I want to keep the thumb pick and take classical guitar lessons from you.
How'd that go over?
Not too well at
Not
first.
too well.
Not too well, as you can imagine. But then he said, because I promised him, I said, I'll do the work.
Yeah.
I'll learn to read music. I'll learn the pieces you tell me I got to learn. But I want to do them with a thumb pick because I didn't want to have to alter my whole hand.
Yeah.
Granted, I was the ripe old age of 14 and a half or 15 years old.
Sure, you knew everything.
Damn right I did. And so he said, okay, if you'll do the work.
Yeah.
And he said, but don't tell anyone you took lessons from me.
Yeah.
So I've never told anyone his name.
All right.
Yeah.
Is he still around? Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yes, he is.
He must be proud.
I don't know. I haven't seen him since I was
He's walking around 16, with a paper bag on his head.
16 or 17 when we moved to North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you did find yourself, despite all this rural music and classic, or it wasn't classic rock, it was rock. You found yourself at Berkeley.
Yeah.
Yeah. And tell me, I mean, we've talked about this, but tell me a little bit about the rationale to go there and what that was like.
Well, at the time, I grew up in the Bay Area of California, but when I was 16, we moved to a rural part of North Carolina.
Yeah.
And so the music scene there was pretty good. It was a lot of southern rock, country rock stuff.
Yeah.
And that was about it.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted to be a player, and I knew that this area, while it was a great area to live, and I have some of my best friends in the world there, it's not a great area for a musician to learn all that he needs to learn.
Sure.
So I started looking at schools, and every school I looked into, you had to be a classical guitar major. Mm-hmm. And I was just smart enough to realize that if I got a classical guitar degree, I would probably wind up being a teacher somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a player. Yep. And then I found Berkeley, mm-hmm. and I found out you could major in something other than classical guitar. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm in.
What was your major?
It was a triple major, actually. It was performance, guitar, and composing and arranging.
Wow. Overachiever.
No, I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. I was just telling someone last night, I couldn't decide what I wanted to do there. And so I was taking all these courses in different classes. Yeah. And I got down to where I had enough money for one semester. Mm-hmm. I went to my counselor. I said, I've got enough money for one semester. Is there any way we can make this into a degree of some kind? And he said, yes, we can.
All right.
So,
and then you're freshly graduated from Berkeley. Sounds like you have no money in your wallet.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's the plan then?
Well, I was already married.
Okay.
So I was married and had no money. Uh-huh. And so we moved from there. We left Boston, and this was December. And I swear we were like the Beverly Hillbillies because we had an old pickup truck. And I knew that we were getting ahead in life because at this point, not everything we owned would fit in the truck.
Perfect.
So we had a chair tied on the back of the truck.
All right.
Yeah. And hence the Beverly Hillbillies thing. So we moved to Nashville. Yeah. And I just started, beating down the doors and then, that's where my education really started. Yeah. So what if you can play a Locrian scale at 200 beats per minute? Yeah. Nobody cares. Yeah. Can you play, I've been working on the railroad or whatever. Can you play a song on your instrument? Yeah. That's what they want. Yeah. Can you play something? Do you have something to say? Yeah. And so that's where the real learning process began was, okay, now I got to woodshed in a totally different way. Mm-hmm. Learn to back up singers and to play in bands with a different kind of feel than what I was used to in Boston. And, because we were all into jazz rock up there. That was the thing back then, jazz rock. Big in Nashville. Well, there were some great bands back then in Nashville. Yeah. And I used to go and see them. Those guys were just, way beyond what I could ever be. Yeah. So I thought, okay, maybe jazz rock isn't my thing. Yeah. How do you even break into Nashville as a kid who's just graduated from Berkeley? Did you have friends who kind of helped you out? I had one friend there. Yeah. A guy, his name is Jim Wood. He's a fiddler, and he went to Berkeley for one semester. Okay. And he said, hey man, if you ever move down to Nashville, give me a call. Yeah. So I moved down there and I called him, and that led to nothing. And so I just started. Well, it's different, I think, now. I mean, I got a job teaching at a local music store. Yep. And at Cotton Music. Yep. And so through there, I started meeting more players because players would come in, mm-hmm. I'd be in between students and meet them, and that led to some gigs here and there. And mm-hmm. then I wound up. There was a guy there who was teaching at the store. He'd been working at Opryland, the theme park. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to do it anymore, so he called me, and so I wound up getting that gig, and then then wound up getting in some bands where we do all the society gigs.
Yeah.
Don our tuxedos and
Do all that.
oh yeah,
What guitar were you using at this point in your life?
probably a Strat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any acoustic or no?
No,
No.
I wasn't. I was playing acoustic guitar all the time at home,
Yeah.
and but to make a living, you had to be heard,
Hmm.
and pickups weren't very good 30 years ago,
Yeah.
and so I just found myself as an electric guitar player.
Yeah.
Not a great one by any means. I could bend the strings, I could play it in tune,
Sure.
I could play the chords.
Yeah.
I'm not a tone guy. I'm not one of those guys who can just dial in a great tone on any amp. Some guys just have that knack. They can grab any instrument and they sound great.
Hmm.
Not so with me.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Was your heart in the electric side of things back then? Like, were you loving it, or was it
For a
more just
while.
business? Yeah.
Well, for a while, it really was, because I thought, well, this is what you got to do.
Yeah.
So I thought, all right, let's be an electric guitar player. I
Yeah.
had a 175, a 335, a Strat, a Tele, all the basics that you got to have. And but I'd go on sessions and I'd hear myself back, and I never heard anything that I really liked.
Yeah.
I was like, it was okay, everything worked, it fit,
Yeah.
but it wasn't something that I loved until I started getting calls to be on acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, wait a minute, I'm really loving this sound. I found that I had a voice
Yeah.
on the acoustic guitar. And then I started, just picking up restaurant gigs and,
Yeah.
all those gigs that we now just hate. They got to be done. You have to do them. It's part of learning and growing and
Yeah.
all that. And but thankfully, I haven't gotten a call for one of those in a long time.
Good.
Because when the phone rings, if you're open, you say, "Sure, I'll do it."
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. What was the Opryland gig like? I mean, I interviewed Steve Martin, and I've talked to John Jorgensen about their Disneyland days. But what was the gig?
I think
with Opryland?
Disneyland was like, it was like Disneyland for musicians, as opposed to Opryland, which was Opryland. It was okay.
Yeah.
It was it was a good gig. It kept me in town at home,
Yeah.
and I got to network. As far as the gig went, I went in every day and I'd get a massive headache, and it wouldn't leave until I left.
Okay.
And it took me a couple of years to realize what was going on. I'm not a quick learner, and so it dawned on me, this job is really getting to me.
Yeah.
And it's just because all you're doing is you play the same show 5 times a day.
Okay. No variation.
Not much.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of room for variation, because you have singers and dancers on stage,
Mm-hmm.
and you got horn players, and so you can't be really screwing around with the arrangements at all,
Yeah.
because you'll throw somebody off. You might get a 4-bar solo once in a while.
Sure.
That'll be probably during the closer when everyone's dancing, and
Got it.
so it was a great gig for what it was when it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to play another tune?
Sure.
I'm just gonna put you on the spot.
All right.
Yeah.
So somebody asked for I Got Rhythm.
Somebody asked for I Got Rhythm.
Jeez, I've been driving since 8 o'clock this morning. I just got here.
Yeah. That's how we roll.
I had a stroke 3 years ago. And somebody wants... Keep talking while I get it too.
All right. Pete's tuning up his Collings, which we're gonna talk about in a few minutes. You took one boat or 2 boats to get here?
We took one boat
Okay.
and one long drive. We thought about doing more boats, but we've been on enough boats over the last few days.
Yeah.
We came in on Tuesday, went to Whidbey Island on a boat, and then left Thursday and took 2 boats to get up to Victoria. And I'm tuning because I care.
Thank you.
Wish me luck. I
All
had a
right. Good
stroke.
luck. Wow. And that was live. No overdubs, no edits.
Take it as you get it.
You have no one to blame but yourself for making that song really hard to play. I've heard much easier versions of that song.
If I'd have known I was going to have a stroke, I'd have never done it that hard.
Well, that's a perfect segue to a question that Sam Smiley asked on the Fretboard Journal Facebook page for you, which he said, how do you decide when you're actually finished with an arrangement?
Well, Sam, let me tell you. When it's done. How do you decide when you're done? I think for me it's when I've said all I have to say.
Yeah.
You know, I generally will go through a tune at least 3 times. An arrangement like that one is 3 times.
Okay.
And I did a modulation to B flat where I just did that Travis picking through all the chords, and that's kind of fun. And then I found a cool way to modulate back to G.
Okay.
You know, that's always a good thing to do when you're arranging things for guitar to modulate. It'll open up new things to you as a player and make it more interesting for the listener too. But that one, how do you know when you're done? I guess it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
You know.
And will that evolve? Will I Got Rhythm sound different a few years from now than it does today, or you're kind of happy with how it is?
I'm happy with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of like a big band arrangement, all done on guitar.
Yeah.
That's the way I hear it in my head.
Yeah.
And I've done it with bands, with a couple of different bands before, just that arrangement, and it works out really well. You know, we extend it for solos and all that in the middle section. And sorry, Sam, that's all I got.
That's all right. It was a great song. So you got smitten with the acoustic guitar, and then what happened there? How did you get to be Pete Huttlinger? a lot of practice. Were there any pivotal things that kind of happened? Guys that took you under their wing, or guys you studied, or?
I studied everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I listened to everyone from Larry Carlton and Robin Ford to Tony Rice and Doc Watson and Chet Atkins and Merle Travis. Anyone with a guitar, really. Whether they played electric or acoustic. John Schofield was a huge influence for a period of time. Joe Pass, Johnny Smith. I mean, all these guys, they all had a role in what I was learning. Earl Clue's another one. I would transcribe what these guys did. I would write it all down, and I'd learn it note for note, and I'd kind of lock it away somewhere. And then, as time progressed, I started realizing, hey, if I'm going to arrange something, maybe I could take that idea that I learned from this guy and do that little move right here, and all that works. And I could take an idea from Earl Clue and do that, and things started evolving that way. But really, it's the way I became who I am now is by having an open mind musically, not saying, I don't like this kind of music, because all music is valid. Yeah. And being willing to try and learn something from all the kinds of music that I can. Yeah. And somehow it's kind of I think I've got a voice of my own. I don't know yet.
You do.
Maybe I'll find out, in a few years.
Is that transcribing thing something that you kind of picked up at Berkeley, or was that something?
I actually started doing that when I was in North Carolina, and I told my classical guitar teacher I would learn to read music, and so I learned the fundamentals of it. I was not a great sight reader by any means. Yeah. But as I would get interested in things, I would try to write them down just so I could have it for myself for later, because I couldn't remember everything. Yeah. I wasn't that smart. Yeah. Look at me. Yeah. And so, hey, not so quick. And so I would start and I would write them down. There was this piece that John McEwen did on one of the Dirt Band records. It was a little classical piece that he did on steel string guitar.
Yeah.
I thought that's really cool. And so I found out how to write that down. And then when Al Di Meola and Paco de Lucia did that Mediterranean Sundance, I think that was the name of the song on that album Midnight Sun. Maybe it was Midnight Sun, Mediterranean Sundance, but I think it was the other way around. And I remember I started writing all that down. Then it got so fast. I went to my teacher at high school and I said, "Hey, I'm trying to figure out how to write this down. Can you help me?" He goes, "Well, I could do it all for you, but you wouldn't learn much. So good luck, son."
Lovely.
Yeah, but that's been a process that I've used my whole life. I still do it all the time.
Yeah.
Still, I transcribe things all the time, write them down.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a good skill to have.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I encourage people who are younger players who are up and coming to learn to do that. But too many people want to bypass the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And there's some great players out there who are young, fantastic players who blow my mind. But they tend to be somewhat limited in their focus of abilities.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get them to get in a bigger box.
Yeah. When I do, or when anyone does a Google search on Pete Huttlinger, a few things come up. The fly fishing theme, or what's the show? I'm spacing on the show name.
Oh, Fly Fishing America.
Fly Fishing America theme song, the John Denver years, and the new album and other stuff. But tell me about how those first two things came about: the John Denver stint and also the fly fishing theme song. Well,
it happened in that order. John Denver first.
Okay.
And I was into fly fishing before I met John.
Yeah.
And the John gig came from a friend of mine in Nashville who was doing a record, and it was being produced by a guy named Chris O'Connor, who was a tour manager and record producer and sort of an everything guy for John throughout his whole career. And the reason he was producing it is because Mike Muldoon, who was my friend who was making the record, his brother was the mechanic on John's Learjet.
Of course.
From the time John ever bought it. There was a big age difference between he and his brother. And so his brother played some songs for Chris O'Connor, and Chris said, "I'll produce that." And so he flew into Nashville. So Mike asked me if I'd come play on the record. This is a long story that doesn't need to be this long. But anyway,
thanks to a Learjet.
Thanks to a Learjet, I got the gig with John. Yes. And then at the end of the week, we worked on this whole record all week, and I played a lot of instruments. And KO said, "Hey, we need a new guitar player. You want to go to China?" I said, "Yeah."
Wow.
He still owes me a trip to China, though, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We went almost everywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How weird is that? As a kid, you were listening to John Denver.
Oh, I
and
know it.
Suddenly, you're his guitarist.
I know it. Still waiting for the Eagles.
Yeah, for that call.
Glenn, Don, Joe, Tim. Yeah.
They probably have a 747.
That'll work. Yeah.
Find that mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, did that? Were you just pinching yourself the whole time? Did you have much in the way? Did you get to talk much with John about him, everything?
At times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was a big fan when I was a kid, and then as I got older, I got into all kinds of other music, and so I'd kind of put all that stuff obviously by the wayside because it was never real popular to play his stuff, some Country Roads in a bar or something like that, or Annie's Song at a wedding. But he's become popular again. Yeah. Yeah, and so I did get a chance to talk to him on several occasions. We'd be on a tour bus or. We'd oftentimes go to the bar at the hotel after the gig and sit around and chat. He was not an easy person to get to know.
Okay.
He was. I don't know if he was guarded because he was so huge for so many years. Yeah. Or if he just was always that way. I don't know. But he was certainly a great guy. He was the best boss I've ever had in the music business. Yeah. He was so giving in that we met in a hotel room in Detroit the night before the first gig. And he had a bunch of guitars out there, and we played through some of his songs. He said, "Sounds good." He says, "See you tomorrow night." And he said, "You know what?" He said, "Just play whatever you want to on the songs. If there's a song I do that you don't know, don't worry about it. Just listen and come in the second verse or whatever." And I mean, that's unheard of. And he said, "You can't throw me." He said, "I've been doing this for 25 years. You know, nothing you do is going to throw me off. So just, you got carte blanche."
Wow.
It's like, you're kidding. I'm home.
Yeah.
You know, it was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a risk, you know, that an artist takes when he does that.
Sure.
But we had 5 gigs to see if I was going to fit in.
Yeah.
And I guess I did. And so then we went off to tour the rest of the world.
Crazy.
After that week. Yeah.
Amazing. And then the fly fishing in America.
Oh, yeah.
Let's
Well,
talk about that.
Well, John had been on this fly fishing show called Fly Fishing America.
Okay.
And I had done this CD called Catch and Release.
Yep. Great CD.
And I was giving them out to everyone, and so I gave one to John's secretary, and she said, "Hey, I sent it to this guy at Fly Fishing America." I said, "You sent it to the guy at Fly Fishing America?" I was more thrilled about that than almost anything. Yeah. And his name was John, also John Barrett.
Okay.
And he called me and said, "Hey, you want to write us a theme song?" I said, "Yes, I do." It wasn't like it was a big, you know, it wasn't like a big TV deal, you know.
Sure.
He said, "We don't have any money."
Sure.
He said, "But we have the best fly fishing gear in the world. How
All
about
right.
that?" He said, "You can." He said, "You send me your wish list, and I will make good on it."
Do you still have all that gear?
I have most of it.
Yeah.
I had an R.L. Winston rod, and I just felt a little bit guilty keeping that rod.
Yeah.
And so I sold the rod to a guy who was a young doctor who really wanted one. And I said, "Well, here, I bequeath this to you."
Yeah.
But I probably still have the boots and the reel, and I don't know what else he sent. Maybe a vest and
Yeah.
you know, some waders.
And we'll get to it in a minute, where you actually have a guitar and fly fishing camp happening this summer.
Yes, I do.
I'm going to ask you that in a minute. Another
Okay.
question that came about, well, John Cotton wants to know, tell us what you do to take care of your hands. Let's hear about that.
I don't do anything, John.
Okay.
I just yeah.
All right.
I take care of my nails. You know.
Yeah, sure.
I go
Acrylic, natural.
acrylic
yeah.
nails on these 3 fingers.
Yeah.
I go to a salon.
Yep.
I
In
tell them-
Nashville.
Yep. I walk in. I say, "Dam mun lam fill." That means I need a fill in Vietnamese.
Okay.
And
And $18 later, you're set.
9.
Nine.
brother. Yeah, you got to come to
Shows you how out of
Nashville.
touch I am. Yeah. Bert Bennett. He wants to know, and I'm not going to make you play it, although you're welcome to play it if you want to. How you put Superstition into one guitar rendition, because it should take at least 2 guitars to play that tune. So what was that? Just you pushing yourself? You're kind of known for these Stevie Wonder.
I like that stuff.
Tunes, yeah.
How did I do it? I wrote it out.
Yeah.
I wrote out the notes. I wrote out the bass line and the melody,
Yeah.
and then I wrote the horn part.
You make it sound so simple.
And I just thought, well, how do they? Well, if you think about the parts individually while you're playing it, then you can't do it.
Yeah.
But if you just think about it all as a whole, it's all just one piece of music.
Yeah.
And you just have to accent certain things to make the melody come out, or the horn part, or
Mhm.
the bass line. Then that's what you do.
Okay. So it's that easy.
And then it took about 2 months, practice.
Yeah.
It took about 2 hours to get it on paper.
Yeah.
And 2 months to get it under my fingers.
Okay. And you did some Stevie Wonder tunes.
Mm-hmm.
And is there anything you're working on right now that you can tell anybody about that's exciting, or are you kind of done with the rock and pop classics for a while?
I think I'm kind of done with that for a while.
Yeah.
My latest thing is an album I have called McGuire's Landing,
Yep.
and
Well, let's talk about that, because that actually
Okay.
has a John Denver connection.
yes, it
not?
does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. McGuire's Landing, the
Yeah.
piece
Yeah.
McGuire's Landing. He was going to write the lyrics to it,
Okay.
and he passed away before he got the chance to. And so, but he had asked me, "What's this tune about?"
Yeah.
And I hurried up and came up with a story.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "I like that story. I want to write the lyrics to this." I said, "Great." And so it started mulling around in my head. And I thought, well, maybe I could come up with some lyrics to this tune. So I wrote some, and I thought, I'm not going to have it as lyrics. So for a long time, I let it just sit. And I would tell people that, in concerts. Oh, John was going to write the lyrics to this, and just imagine in your own mind what he would have written. It would have been something about love or nature or something, and make everyone feel good. And then I'd play it, but then I got to thinking about the story, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
So I wrote a 50-page short story, and wrote another 13 or 14 tunes to go with it. So the story and the music all go together, and there's some songs on it as well. And I had a friend of mine, Molly Weaver from Los Angeles, come out to California. To where do I live? Nashville.
Yeah.
And she sang some beautiful songs on it for me. Yeah. Oh gosh. And I had a lot of great players on this. Andrea Zahn, Byron House, Jeff Taylor, Matt Flinner played mandolin on it. It's a really Herb Peterson played banjo and sang on one for me. So I got to bring in some really great friends and great musicians to help lend their talents to this project, and I'm really, really, really happy with the way it turned out.
And the story that you wrote, that came first? Before the songs, or
no? I wrote all the tunes.
Okay.
But I'd write them, and I'd sort of, all this happened over a period of years because I had a stroke and then heart failure, and so I didn't even think I was going to complete it all. So I didn't actually write the story until all the music was almost done.
Okay.
And then I had a general idea of how I was going to go, but then once it was all almost done, I sat down and just banged out the story over a couple of weeks, and
how do you top that album? How are you going to do another one?
You're right. I'll quit.
I don't want you to quit. It's just a very.
I know.
It was very.
It was an adventurous project, an adventurous idea, and we had to raise some money to be able to do it because we had big string section on several pieces, and paying all the players and all the studios, and none of that's cheap. Yeah. And I don't know though. I've been mulling around some ideas for something to do again.
Equally ambitious.
Probably.
All right.
Yeah. I don't like to go backwards. Yeah. I don't want to go back to just solo guitar records. Yeah. I'm sure every record I do is going to have some solo guitar work in it. Yeah. But I just feel like there might be some more in me. Than just that. Yeah. And so I'm writing some different kinds of things. Not so much of the Chet style stuff. Okay. More open feeling stuff. Yeah. More some groove oriented things. Cool. Yeah.
So even though we just talked about how you had a mandolinist and a vocalist and everything, let's talk about this thing. Okay. You've been playing at Collings for a while.
Yes.
And you are in the rarefied world of having a Collings Signature Edition. Yes. I don't think that happens too often.
So far once. Yeah.
So where did you find, this is the original Collings, right?
No. My original was a 94 OM2H. Okay. And so it was a herringbone and rosewood back and sides and a spruce top. This one is an OM1. It's just your bare bones basic guitar. You can see it's not been cared for as well as it should have been.
Shame on you.
Sorry, Bill. But it just smokes for me. Yeah. Every note on it just sings so richly, and on this guitar, because I play this one live all the time, I got the action fairly low. So it's like slicing butter with a hot knife. Yeah. It's really easy to play.
Who does your guitar tech stuff in Nashville? Are you willing to talk about that, or is that a trade secret?
No, it's not at all. Charlie over at Joe Glazer's.
Oh, yeah.
Does most everything on this, although it doesn't really need anything. Yeah. Once every couple of years, I might take it in there and say, the action feels a little bit weird. Yeah. He'll bring it back in 5 minutes to try that. Yeah. Oh, that's good, thanks. I leave. It's very susceptible to weather changes. So when I get in an area like this where it's fairly humid, if I were here for a few days, the sound would just kind of go flubby. Yeah. And so, but I tend to spend a lot of time in dry areas like Colorado like Southern Cal and areas like that. And in those areas, you know, the action starts getting up really high, and this split here that split years ago opens up, and it's always a little bit daunting, but it just, you know, it keeps hanging in there. So
yeah,
I've got a bunch of these Collings guitars.
Yeah,
I just think they're all fantastic.
And how did the signature model come about? For folks who don't know the story.
Okay, I was in the hospital, and I'd been suffering from severe heart failure, and Steve McGuire from Collings Guitars flew down. I was in Houston. They life flighted me from Nashville to Houston, and Steve McGuire flew down either the day of the surgery or the day after the surgery, and he was visiting with my wife, and he took one look at me, said, "I've got an idea." And so then he, I didn't even know they were working on this, but he said, "We're going to do a signature model guitar for Pete, because you guys are going to have a lot of bills."
Yeah.
And boy, they helped me in ways I could never express enough thanks for them.
Nice.
Yeah, those guys are best guys. Not only they build the best guitars in the world, they got the biggest hearts. You know, and I've been teasing them for a number of years. Hey, how about a Pete Huttlinger model? Like, Pete, we don't do Pete Huttlinger models.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I'm not asking for anything for free. Let's just do one. We'll put Pete Huttlinger on it.
Yeah.
No, Pete, we don't do signature models. Okay. So what are you saying? Maybe tomorrow? We talk about it later. You know. And then when we were in Houston, and I was I was in and out of the hospital for the last 2 months. I was there for 4 months, 2 months solid. I was in the hospital, and then the last 2 months I was in and out of the hospital. More in than out, but I stayed at a extended stay suites hotel with my wife, and one day she said, "I want you to see something." And I said, "Okay, I'll get up in a little bit." And so I didn't get up for hours. You know, I was just so exhausted back then. And then we got up, and I think we went out and got something to eat, because she kept trying to show me something. I said, I want to get something to eat. And so she was excited, because I'd dropped down to 110 pounds. So anything that could get me to eat was a good thing.
Sure.
So she said, "All right, we'll eat." So we went out, probably to Taco Bell or something, and came back, and she said, "Now I want you to see something." I said, "Can I sleep first?" She said, "No." I said, "All right." So she pulled it up on her computer, and there was the ad that they were sending out to all their dealers, and it showed the Pete Huttlinger model, and I was stunned, to say the least.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was very touching, very moving.
Yeah. How many did they make?
They made 50.
50. All accounted for, I'm sure, by now.
Yes.
Nice. You know, people talk, I don't want to get, because the article covers a lot of your health stuff and the whole story, but people often talk about how, you know, Pat Martino had his stroke and had to listen to his old music and relearn his own music. Did you have to go through a similar thing with what you went through?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
See, because I had a major stroke, but I woke up and I was completely paralyzed on the right side of my body, and I couldn't speak. Yeah. And so when they did emergency surgery, and they kept me under for a day or two, and when they came in and woke me up, I could talk, so they were encouraged by that. And then we had one of those hallmark moments, where my finger moved and the clouds opened, and you heard the angels singing, and then my hand moved, and but it was a long process. Then I had to learn not really how to walk, but how to walk without tripping all the time. Yeah. Because just that little bit of damage to my brain really affected me. I would use a fork, to eat something, and I'd get it in my ear or my cheek. Wow. Yeah, I just couldn't operate very well. Yeah. And so that meant everything with my right hand was screwed up. Yeah. I couldn't write. I mean, I could write, but it was so tiny. I was writing as large as I could, and it was so tiny you couldn't see it. Wow. And so then playing was really hard. Well, then 5 months later, I guess, I was in the hospital with heart failure. So I hadn't fully recovered from the stroke, and then I spent 5 months without playing the guitar. And so when I started back again after the heart failure, I really didn't think I'd be a guitar player again. I thought, I'll be lucky if I can just walk to my mailbox.
Yeah.
I'd be satisfied with that.
Yeah.
And my wife is very encouraging, and would just put the guitar out.
Mm-hmm.
She'd say, well, hey, there's your guitar if you want to play it.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't really want to play it. And then I'd play it. I got some extra light strings for this one.
Okay.
Maybe 10s or something,
Yeah.
or 9s. And I'd play it. My hand, it would hurt. And I thought, why in the hell would somebody do this? I can understand once when you're a kid.
Sure.
But why would somebody do this as an adult? It hurt.
Yeah.
I said, I don't want to play the guitar.
Yeah.
So she put my classical guitar.
Yeah.
Here, this one won't hurt so bad.
Yeah.
So I started playing that, and little by little, I would try things, and I'd get excited. Just like when I was a kid, you get excited when you get something new.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, these were things that I had already been able to do, and it was all in my head. That part was okay. I just couldn't physically make it happen.
Yeah.
And so eventually, I decided, all right, I'm going to try to be a guitar player again.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a while because it was really interesting. Because when I had a stroke, when you play with a flat pick, as I'm sure everyone knows, you tend to strum down and up. Excuse me, that's my batteries.
Okay.
You strum down and up.
Yep.
It's as natural as anything, right?
Yep. Sure.
I could not strum up.
Mm.
I knew what I was supposed to be able to do. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And flat picking,
was not happening at all. I could not play. I couldn't do anything with a flat pick.
Yeah.
And so I heard this tune called Bistro Fada. It's the tune from the movie Midnight in Paris
Okay.
that Stéphane Rambel played
Okay.
and wrote for that. And I thought, well, that sounds really cool. And this was probably, I think it might have been December or January after my heart surgery, which was in May. And so I was playing a lot more, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to see if I can figure out how that tune goes. So we watched the movie. I went and downloaded the song and started writing it out, and I thought, I can never play this tune. No way. But I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that tune. It took probably 6 months, maybe 8 months.
Yeah.
And but then I recorded it, and my doctor, Frank Fish, who's a bass player, I had him come over and play bass on it, and we sent it to Stephen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, he was pretty moved.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So since you just brought that up, I'm curious, what's the very last song you transcribed? Do you remember?
The very last song I transcribed, it was a Chris Thule thing on mandolin,
Okay.
and I don't have my mandolin with me. Oh yeah, there was a John Jorgensen thing that I was just working on last week. It goes, it's called Swingapore.
Okay.
It goes on and on for
Nice.
several minutes. Yeah, that's a cool tune. And so I bought a gypsy jazz guitar
Okay.
recently.
What'd you get?
It's one by Jean Barreau.
Okay.
He's a French builder,
Okay.
and he builds great guitars. He does not speak English. He does
Okay.
not use Google Translate, and does not have a friend who speaks English.
Sounds exciting.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, when we were getting down to the time where I was supposed to send him the final payment, and he was going to send the guitar, and I said, "Okay, how much do I owe you?" He said, "It's okay. You can sold it."
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you have a friend who speaks English? I'm sorry. It is normally not a problem when I communicate this way. Oh, really? It is this time.
Yeah.
And so it was funny though. We had a good laugh.
How'd you find this guy?
Online, I went online and I spent several days listening to a lot of gypsy jazz guitars, because everyone records all their guitars nowadays.
Yeah.
So I put on some good headphones
Yeah.
and I listened to them all. And I found his and I said, "That's the one I want."
Okay.
Contacted him, and just in the nick of time, because shortly after I contacted him, he shut his website down, then shut his Facebook down. I thought, that's it, I'm out,
Yeah.
$1,500 deposit or whatever.
Wow.
But he was just going through a hard time at home. So
Yeah.
he was laying low.
D-hole, oval hole, what'd you get?
Oval hole,
Yeah.
petite bouche.
Nice.
Yeah, It's a really cool guitar. They're so fun to play.
Do you buy a lot of guitars regularly, or are you pretty happy with what you have?
Oh, I'm happy with what I've got. Well, I just bought two recently. I bought a Collings CJ35.
Okay.
It's and I recorded something on it, like maybe a day or two after I got it, and I sent it to Steve at Collings, and I said, "Man, the best old Gibson I've ever played is my brand new CJ35."
Yeah.
They captured that old Gibson sound, except that it's perfectly in tune.
Yep.
There's no issues with the guitar.
Yep.
It sounds great, plays great, looks fabulous, and so I bought that one, and I got the Gypsy Jazz, and I don't think I've bought anything else.
Any on the horizon?
No.
No.
I'll play these two for a while.
Yeah. Well, since you have a guitar in your lap, do you want to play one more tune, and then I'm going to ask you about these camps you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to play McGuire's Landing.
That'd be
with the
great.
piece
Yeah.
from my record. So talk for a minute because I got to get in tune.
Pete is using the Red Snark tuner, favorite around the Fretboard Journal offices as well.
That's good. Keep going.
That's good. Keep going. What tuning is this in?
I'm going into Dad Gad tuning.
Okay.
I'm using an Elliott capo.
Yep.
God's capo. No charge for that, Phil.
All right.
That's my. Do we
that
have
okay?
any extras here? Oh, okay.
You okay?
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
my that's the sound for my batteries.
Yeah, that scares me a little.
It does. It scares people.
Probably scares you more, but
No, I'm okay because it already switched over to a fully charged battery.
okay.
So
It's always got one and then a backup.
yes.
Okay.
And then we've always got two with us, although they're in the car,
Okay.
which is just right out front of the building.
Good.
So if we okay.
All
So
right.
this is called McGuire's Landing.
The tune that John Denver was supposed to write lyrics for, but
Yes.
didn't have time to. Yeah.
Yes.
Astounding. That's great.
Thanks.
When did you write that song originally?
Maybe 97.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And for folks who want to sound like you, or at least gleam some... are we okay?
Yeah, we're okay.
For folks who want to glean a little bit of your knowledge, I saw that you've got a bunch of workshops and camps going on this year.
Yeah, we do them at our home,
Okay.
and we've got several coming up, and I do them as themed camps.
Okay.
Like I'll teach the music of James Taylor, the Beatles stuff,
Yeah.
John Denver stuff, teach my arrangements or my style of arranging.
Okay.
So we like to pick a theme for a weekend, so
Okay.
people come with an interest in an artist, and they get a bunch of songs,
Yeah.
and some fairly accurate transcriptions,
Mm-hmm.
if I might say so.
Tab or musical notation?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah, and but the one big exciting thing we've got this year is we're doing one in Montana,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a fly fishing and guitar camp.
Okay.
And so there's going to be 3 days of just guitar.
Okay.
Although we're done at like 5:30 at night, and the sun doesn't go down until 9:30. So you're welcome to go fishing.
Okay. It's like right on a river or lake or something?
It's very close to the
Yeah.
Yellowstone River,
Okay.
and it's right near the entrance to Yellowstone Park. It's right outside of Livingston, Montana, and then on the Saturday it's going to be a full day of fishing,
Okay.
and everyone there'll be a lot of boats and a lot of guides and two men per boat or women,
Yeah.
so we'll be on a lot of different waters up there, and I'm really excited about this. I've got a friend of mine, Jeff Troxel. He was an old college buddy of mine who was a national flat picking champion,
Okay.
and he lives in Wyoming, so he's going to come up and he's going to be teaching flat picking, and I'll be doing fingerstyle stuff, and we'll have a lot of jam sessions at night or during the day,
Yeah.
and I'm really excited about that.
How many folks are allowed to come to this thing?
20.
20. Have you
Mhm.
hit your limit?
We've got about 3 or 4 left.
3 or 4 left?
Yeah.
And then, and all abilities welcome, or is it kind of more for the intermediate advanced player?
For intermediate,
Yeah.
beginners, while they can learn a lot and have a lot of fun, it's probably not the best kind of camp for a beginner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, it's a little pricey for a beginner.
What if you're a good guitarist but an awful fly fisherman? Would that work?
Oh yeah.
That works.
You're not
okay.
fishing in my boat, but yeah. Just kidding. No. It's the thing is, it's about the fun of guitar and the fun of fly fishing.
Yeah.
And the beauty of fly fishing is not how good you are, how many fish you catch.
Yeah.
It's about where you are, where you're fishing.
Yeah.
You're standing out in the middle of a beautiful river
Yeah.
in the middle of Montana.
Yeah.
That's a pretty all right thing,
Yeah.
if you ask me.
Yeah. And you just wrap this thing up in a garbage bag or something?
No, I've got a bag that it goes in when I take a shower.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
And so it keeps it all waterproof.
Yeah.
And so it all goes in that, and then I put that inside my waders and my wading
Wow.
belt around it. And so
You're
far, I haven't taken a spill yet.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
And folks should go to PeteHuttlinger.com, right?
Yes.
Find all that stuff out.
Yeah, you can find out that and lots more.
All right, great.
Yeah.
When we had David Greer here, we asked him for his favorite recent joke. Do you got one?
Oh yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
We can't do the cookie joke because that was Greer's.
That's fine. You
All
can
right.
have all the cookie jokes.
All right, go for it.
I got bear jokes.
All right.
See, I was just up in Vancouver Island.
Yep.
And there's a guy who told me the story. He said he lives out in a remote area of Vancouver Island, and he said that he moved into this area, and a guy came over and gave him a card and said, "Oh, what's this?" He said, "Well, this is the bear removal service, and you're going to need to call them eventually." He said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Trust me, you're going to need to call the bear removal service." So he puts the card up on his billboard at home, and sure enough, after a couple months, he gets up one morning, there's a bear on his roof.
Mm.
He calls the bear removal service. Bear removal service comes, and it's one guy in a truck, but he's also got with him a baseball bat, a shotgun, and a pit bull.
Okay.
And he gets out of the truck. He says, "All right, here's what I'm going to do." He says, "I'm going to take your ladder. I'm going to climb up on your roof. I'll take the baseball bat with me. I'm going to knock the bear out. He's going to fall off the roof. At that point, the pit bull is going to grab him by the testicles, and he will not let go. You got that? This pit bull will not let go of these testicles. And that'll give me time to get down the ladder and get him in the cage, and we'll get him off your property." He said, "All right. Hey, what's the shotgun for?" He goes, "That's the most important part. you come in handy with the shotgun. If by chance the bear knocks me off, you have to shoot the dog.
Lovely.
Thank you very
That's
much.
good.
Come on, that's a good one.
What is it
I
with
can
you
hear
Nashville
I
guys?
can hear that internet laughter.
Yeah.
Yes.
All those LOLs.
Yes.
Pete, thank you so much for doing this.
You're
Being
welcome,
our
Jason. Thank
Crash
you.
Test Dummy here at Fretboard Journal Live.
Yeah.
Thanks for everyone who's been watching. If there were any technical difficulties at all, and you're still watching, like that would happen, we're gonna be fixing whatever broke and putting it back on YouTube. We've backed it all up, but I pray it all worked smoothly. Thanks again to Martin Guitars for sponsoring this series, and stay tuned on fretboardjournal.com. We're also going to be posting, I think, as soon as next week. We had an amazing stage at Wintergrass with Chris Eldridge and Julian Lodge playing 25 really rare vintage guitars that I assembled and talking about them. So that video, which will be about as long as this video, will be up soon too. So stay tuned for that. And Fretboard Journal 32, just around the corner. Fretboard Journal 31, I think you're in it.
That's right.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody.